Hello and welcome back to So Strategic. Now, today we're going to be talking all about accountability. Now, this is a word that people kind of get freaked out by at times because they think, wow, someone's going to be watching me. Someone's going to be, making sure that I'm not doing the wrong things. Someone's just, big brother's going to be looking over my shoulder, right? Ultimately, that's not what accountability is technically about, right? Accountability is taking an account of your own abilities so that you can hold yourself to a standard to get to the places that you know you can actually get to achieve the things that you know are actually possible for you to achieve, and ultimately to rise up to the level of success that is truly tangible for you. Now, before we jump in, I want to say one specific quote because I just said the whole thing about Big Brother. Now, I take that and I take it to that next level and I say, I want to live my life in a way that if the people I loved most, my wife, my kids, right, my close family, my close friends, if they had hidden cameras all around me at any given time, that they would be proud of the things that I'm doing on a daily basis, that they would actually see what I do day in, day out, from the moment I start to the moment I end, to the moments when no one's around me or the moments when everyone's around me. And they would see those things and they would be proud of the person I am. That is a pretty intense level of personal accountability. That shapes the way that I structure my day. It adjusts and shapes the way that I live my life. It shapes the way that I interact with people. It shapes the way that I treat people, right? The way that I actually serve people, serve others. All of these things all tie into accountability. Now, often we just think accountability is your boss, holding his thumb or her thumb over you the whole time, or you holding your thumb over your subordinates if you're the owner of the company, which obviously in this case, most of you probably are. But that's not what accountability is about. Accountability is getting someone to realize what is inside of them and holding them to a standard that elevates their natural perception of who they are, what they can become, what they can step into. So there's a couple different areas that I want to think about this accountability structure. I want to think about it from the lens of leading your team, and I want to think about it from the lens of actually building a good, sustainable business model. So that's your products, your services, everything within that component. Okay, so when we're looking at these two things, right, we're going to start with the leading your team element because this is where people get tripped up a lot. Okay, if you're trying to build a company, right, to that $1 million mark annually, you have to be able to lead a team. Okay, this is the threshold where we have to start stepping beyond just you doing all the things, wearing all the hats, being everything at any given time for everybody, right? That is not a sustainable way to build a business. It's a quick way to get burned out. Okay, so as we're thinking about this, you have to think about, how do I lead a team well? Leadership is truly about potential, right? It's about seeing human potential and setting a standard for the people that are working with you to actually rise up to the level, right? The ceiling of the potential that's within them. So as a leader and as you're establishing a culture of accountability, that starts with honesty, right? You got to be honest with people. First off, with the vision. You have to actually know what you're trying to build. You have to know where you're trying to take them. You have to know what you're getting them to say yes to before you can actually hold them accountable to that. If you don't know where they're actually going, right? If someone doesn't know where you're trying to take them, you're going to have a very, very hard time actually holding them accountable to anything because they don't ever see what it's actually leading unto. Okay. That's number one. The next thing you need to do is, as you're setting, that standard for them, as you're setting the vision, you have to set clear priorities and clear objectives. So if you're leading a team right now and you're having a hard time with that team actually achieving, their tasks, or, checking off the tasks in the right way, or taking ownership of the role, or maybe they're in more of a leadership role, right? Actually leading the people that are underneath them. Okay. That means that you probably haven't clearly established what those main priorities are. So that's a big thing. That's pretty easy to shift, right? Set some time, map it out for yourself, right? Get a piece of paper, write down every single vertical within your business and exactly what's needed to be accomplished by whoever's in charge of that vertical. You might wear some of those hats. Other people might wear some of those hats. Other people might have people under them wearing some of those hats. But you have to clearly outline what is within each of those verticals and which components are actually priorities. Now, once you have that established, the next thing you have to look at is creating a standard within your organization. So every single organization, right, whether you're big, whether you're small, whether you're mid-size, within that, under $1 million sphere, right, every single organization has to have some kind of standard that they're operating from. Now, that might be response times. That might be the way that you service a customer when they come into your building. It might be the way that you service a client if you're an agency, right? Whatever that thing is for you, however that actually translates into your business, it might even be like product delivery, something like that. It doesn't matter. You have to have a standard. Now, there's a quote that I say within our team. It's the standard is the standard. So whatever standard I set for our team has to be the standard that we actually operate from. There's no variance from it. There's no question marks. It is what it is, period, right? We are hiring employees and we're partnering with them in their lives in exchange for their skills. We're giving them money, right? So we get to make the rules for the way that they operate within the confines of our businesses. Okay. It's the same for you. So regardless of what business you're in, what kind of business you're in, you have to set that standard and you don't vary from that standard. This is a big mistake that many business owners make because they are scared to hold people accountable. I was in that place before, right? It was never comfortable to tell somebody, hey, you're kind of dropping the ball. Hey, you're kind of sucking a little bit, right? You got to raise up your ability so that you can actually fulfill the role, or I'm going to have to get someone else in this position to fulfill the role. Ultimately, we're building a business to solve some kind of problem in the marketplace. And if you're unable to do that, or you're unable to commit to what it takes to actually be the person I need, then I have to go find the person who can actually become that, because there's a lot of other people on this team that are dependent upon the person in this role doing their job, right? So that kind of thing, it takes some guts to start to have those conversations. Some people it's natural, others it's not. But when you establish a standard and you start to operate from that standard, suddenly it becomes much easier to hold people accountable because they already know what the standard is. So what you really want to get to is this thing called self-accountability. It's where people within your organization, right, or even like group accountability, they kind of merge with one another. Self-accountability is when they're truly embracing what they're being held accountable to, and they are doing it for something bigger than just their paycheck, right? There's something innately inside of them that makes them want to be better. That comes from vision. That comes from being a part of something bigger than just yourself. That makes yourself rise up in a way that actually leads you to doing better work. Now, when you have a lot of people that are doing that, they're operating from this high place of self-accountability, suddenly you start to have higher group accountability, where people are holding each other accountable in the group, and it's not even necessarily having to come to you, right, to go and discipline someone. Now, people don't want to disappoint their peers, right? They're working for one another as well. And so when you create a culture within your organization where people first off value themselves, and second, they look outward and they value one another, suddenly the level of accountability within your organization increases, and it's easier for you to get more impactful things done quickly than if you didn't have that, right? Very, very simple concept, but it takes some time to actually be able to become the leader that's needed to truly disseminate this kind of culture, right? It's something that starts from you, and you have to disseminate that forward. Okay, so something that's very, very big. Hold people accountable to their jobs. Do not keep someone in positions that's actually not fulfilling the role that they need to. Okay, big, big deal with regards to personal accountability within your teams. Now let's shift the paradigm just a little bit, or not the paradigm, but let's shift the thought process a little bit, and let's focus on your actual business, right? Your product, your service. There has to be a strong, high level of accountability with the way that you deliver, the way that you present, and the way that you actually fulfill what you're promising to somebody that you're going to do for them. Okay, a lot of businesses fail because of this. They overpromise and they underdeliver, right? It's one of the most common sales, quotes, right? That the gurus would tell you, hey, you always underpromise and overdeliver. Most people do the opposite. They want to, have those like really impactful marketing pieces, and then they don't actually deliver on what they've now promised their potential customers or their current customers that they're actually going to do for them. So, easy way to do that, right? Do what you say you're going to do. Very, very simple. Do what you say you're going to do. Always stay true to your word. It's one of the highest forms of personal accountability. If you say you're going to do something and it's ethical and it's moral and it's right and it's good for your customers without overextending yourself and doing something that you shouldn't be doing, do it. Always stick to it. That's the number one way that you can continue to build trust with your customers. It's the number one way that you can continue to actually have them coming back to you over and over and over. And many times, one of the biggest killers of businesses is a lack of retention or repeat purchases. So you might be able to get the customers to you, but once they come to you, you can't actually keep them ordering because either your product sucks, right? Just to be totally blunt about it, your product or your service really just sucks, or you're just truly not giving them the value that they need beyond the initial transaction. Okay. So part of being accountable is making sure that you are constantly self-reflecting, analyzing what you're doing, analyzing the way that you're delivering your products, the way that you're servicing your customers, the way that you're actually engaging with them once they've given you their hard-earned money. That stuff matters. It matters. And when you can actually fulfill on the promise that they're making to you, it can create so many opportunities for you to actually continue to get their money time and time again. Now, the reason for that is because you've developed trust, right, through your own accountability, through the accountability of your products and services, holding those things to the standards that you're setting for them. So, right, so now you're taking the micro level of individuals need to make sure that they're doing the things they need to do to fulfill their roles. When they do that, then your product is now being held accountable by the people that are doing what they need to do, which creates a sense of accountability to the customer because the customer is now getting what was promised to them, right? It's a very like macro to micro way of looking at that. You think about the product. For the product to be held accountable, the people that are actually fulfilling that product have to be doing their jobs. So really, you can't separate the product service side from the personnel side because ultimately they go hand in hand. Now, if you have a software or something like that, and obviously there are outliers to that, so I don't want to just make a blanket statement there because most things are not just black and white. There's a lot of gray a lot of times in many different components of building a business. There's no get rich quick pill or anything that you can take to get you there quickly. But ultimately, if you stay accountable, if you continue to keep your team accountable, and if you grow in the skills necessary to continue elevating the standard for your team, to elevate the standard for your product, to continually improve your product, suddenly you begin to see that the issues that you were having before, the ability to not really break through some of those thresholds financially, they start to go away because ultimately you've solved many of the problems that are blocking them from being able to have success. So if you're having issues right now with bottlenecks in your team, with people not doing the right thing, with them not fulfilling their end of the bargain, you have to up your level of accountability, which means you have to grow as a leader. You have to grow as someone who's willing to hold your team to the standard, the contractual agreement you make in an employee arrangement, right? You have to hold them to that standard and ensure that your customers are truly getting served with the utmost level of really care, right? It's all about care. It's about caring for the customer, truly solving the pain point. And that is what gets you to cross the $1 million threshold.